Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cavoukian, and I'm delighted to be with you today remotely. I wish I could be there live, but at least I can reach you with my video. And we're going to talk about a number of things, but whenever I have a captive audience, I can't help by starting with trying to dispel the myths, of which there are many. The first one being privacy is not about secrecy. It's not about having something to hide. Not at all. Privacy is all about control. It's about personal control relating to the uses of your personal data. User control is absolutely critical. You have to be able to exercise freedom of choice and make the decisions yourself. The Germans have a wonderful term for this called informational self-determination, that it should be the individual who determines the fate of his or her personal information. And they considered it to be such an important value that they enshrined it as a right in their constitution in 1983. It's absolutely vital. And one of the reasons user control is so important is because context is key. Only the individual data subject knows the context associated with the data and its importance to them. So whether there's no concern in releasing it or there is, that understanding resides with the data subject. Context is absolutely key. That's why you have to involve personal control. Now I'm going to talk to you about privacy by design, which I refer to as the decade of privacy by design, because in 2010 it was unanimously passed as an international standard by the International Assembly of Privacy Commissioners and Data Protection Authorities. Once a year, privacy commissioners, I used to be a privacy commissioner for many years, we have an international commissioners conference, usually in Europe. In 2010 it was in Jerusalem. And at the end of a 3 or 4 day conference, we have a half-day closed session where we vote on various resolutions advanced by commissioners. I advanced a resolution that year that privacy by design should be considered an international standard to complement regulatory compliance, which is always after the fact. It's reactive. It's very valuable once there is a privacy infraction or data breach. But what I realized by all of us agreeing to this was that commissioners, we felt that we were only reaching the tip of the iceberg these days, that the majority of privacy harms in this day and age of ubiquitous computing, massive online connectivity, social media everywhere, wireless wearable devices, that we were only reaching the tip of the iceberg, that the majority of privacy harms were remaining largely unknown, unchallenged, unregulated. The base of the iceberg, we didn't have any clue what was going on. And so we needed a different way of addressing the problem. Regulatory compliance in and of itself was no longer sustainable, and we had to complement it with proactive measures intended to prevent the privacy harms from arising. Privacy by design is very much a model of prevention, just like a medical model of prevention, where you want to prevent the cancer from developing as opposed to just offering treatment after the fact. And that's why it was unanimously passed. All of us agreed that we needed to expand the models of data protection that we had in place. And I'm delighted to say we've had great success with this. It's been translated into 40 languages. And when I was commissioner, not a day would go by when I wouldn't hear from some jurisdiction as to what they were doing and all the different ways in which they were implementing privacy by design. Now, there are two essentials to privacy by design. The first one I've mentioned, being proactive, trying to embed the necessary protections into the design of all the operations and the code that we're working with. And the second one is getting rid of zero-sum models in favor of positive-sum. Zero-sum just means that you can only have a positive gain in one area, security, always to the detriment of the other area, privacy, such that the two total to a sum of zero. It's a win-lose model, and privacy always loses out in this model. And I'm not suggesting it should win over security, no, but I want two positive gains, doubly enabling win-win systems, which is what positive sum means. You can have two positive gains at the same time, and you'll have doubly enabling solutions. Wouldn't that be better? And it's as simple and as difficult as getting rid of versus, one interest versus another, and substituting and. The power of and, you can have privacy and security, privacy and data utility. There are 7 foundational principles of privacy by design. I'm going to go through it very quickly. I've already talked about the first one, the need to be proactive so you can prevent the privacy harms from arising. Privacy as the default setting is very important. Let me focus on this for a moment. It means that you are automatically going to embed privacy as the default into all of your operations. When you collect information from a data subject, you will only use the data for the intended purpose of the collection, the primary purpose. And then if later on you want to use the data for a secondary use, you go back to the data subject and seek their positive consent. That's the exact opposite of how it's largely done today. This is a huge game changer. And I'm just thrilled about it because, as you may know, this is included in the new GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is coming out next May. So this is huge. Privacy embedded in design speaks for itself. If you can bake privacy into your data architecture, into the code, into your operations, then it becomes an essential ingredient. It will never be left out. You don't have to forget, oh, I forgot about privacy. It won't be forgotten. It's seamlessly integrated throughout the whole process. I've talked a lot about positive sum, not zero sum. You will see enormous gains when you go to a positive sum win-win model, offering both privacy and security, or privacy and data utility for research purposes. Let me speak about security for a moment. The term privacy is based on a much broader set of protections than security alone. But if you don't have a strong foundation of security today, in this day and age of massive cyber attacks on a daily basis, you're not going to have any privacy. You need a very strong security, strong base of security, foundation with full lifecycle protection end to end. Visibility and transparency is so important. Data subjects have a right of access to their personal data, so you have to keep it open and make it accessible to them. But it will also benefit you because it will allow individuals to tell you if the data is correct or not. No one knows about the accuracy of the data better than the data subject, and they will inform you if you have mistaken information, which will enable you to have much better data in your presence. User privacy is so important. We could have started with this as the first principle, because if you keep it user-centric, focused on the needs of the user, the rest of this flows. This is as simple and as difficult as privacy by design is. These are the foundational principles that I remember, developing at my kitchen table many, many years ago, and they've really grown. And just in case you think this is interesting, but it can't work in real life, au contraire. When I was commissioner, we did a compilation of 22 papers we had written with all of the major tech companies, and they're in this document, Operationalizing Privacy by Design. We worked with all the major tech companies. Think of any major tech company: Microsoft, Intel, HP, IBM, Oracle. I know I'm forgetting some. We did all these papers to show that in all these different areas involving technology, you can, in fact, embed privacy into the design of operation and see great gains. You can gain a competitive advantage by building in privacy by design. And not a week would go by when I wouldn't hear from some jurisdiction. When I was the commissioner, Japan was an early adopter of privacy by design, and they sent this just before my last term ended. And they said, JIPTEC, the Japanese Information Processing Development Center, said that we need to insist on the principle of positive sum, not zero sum, and become enlightened with privacy by design. And I thought, if the Japanese can embrace privacy by design and positive sum, and it's not their first language, then surely the rest of us can certainly consider doing so. Now, as you know, Safe Harbor Agreement has been invalidated completely. The EU invalidated Safe Harbor. In its place, we have seen the Privacy Shield. And this also requires some additional attention, I think. You're going to see this in the courts shortly. The Court of Justice will be ruling on the validity of the Privacy Shield. And so the 4,500 companies in the United States that relied on Safe Harbor, who are hoping to rely on the Privacy Shield, are now in flux, saying, what are we going to do? Which is maybe one reason I've been getting so many calls on privacy by design. How do we do privacy by design? Because they can do that on their own, following the 7 foundational principles. They don't have to wait for something else to develop. And it will show the EU that they're trying to act in good faith in preparation for the GDPR. As I mentioned, I'm sure you all know about the General Data Protection Regulation. It's been in the works for some time, but it's coming into effect in May of 2018. And for the first time ever, privacy by design as data protection by design, I think in Article 25 of the GDPR, has been included, and privacy as the default. This is huge. This will be such a game changer, raising the bar on privacy and data protection dramatically. And I would not be so bold as to say this, but the Information Age wrote an article where they said that it's not too much of a stretch to say that if you implement privacy by design, you've mastered the GDPR. As I said, that's going too far. But what it tells you is that a lot of people are thinking at least do privacy by design in order to get ahead of being in compliance with the GDPR. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And the other reason I want you to do this, privacy is so important to our freedoms. Privacy forms the foundation of our freedom. It is essential to our prosperity, to societal gains and well-being. And you can't have freedom without privacy and all the good things that come with that. Surveillance is the antithesis of privacy. It's the exact opposite. It's what we must avoid at all costs if you value your freedom. I'm sure we can work together on this, and the GDPR will steer us in the right direction. I want to talk just a little bit about machine learning and artificial intelligence because it's so important. We're going to have more machine-informed data decisions coming out, as you know. And people are very concerned about AI. They're saying, what about discrimination from algorithms? There's a belief that software and algorithms are objective, but no. Software is written by human beings. We all have various biases, etc. People are talking about the tyranny of the algorithms, and they're saying that AI is going to lead to a lot of data persistence and data spillage. Data persistence meaning data collected for one purpose is going to hang around forever, and data spillage is data spillover into other areas that perhaps it was not intended. There's a Global Commission on Internet Governance said that algorithms are not necessarily neutral. They do, of course, have built-in values. They serve business models that may lead to unintended biases, discrimination, and economic harm. So I think increasingly we have to scrutinize the algorithms being used and examine the ways in which decisions are being made on an automated basis, relying on machine-informed decisions through AI. I mentioned the tyranny of algorithms because there's been a lot of talk about this, that when you reduce data relating to your past to bits of data that may be out of context, that you may take this in the wrong direction relating to present-day decision makings. So we have to make sure we don't have tyranny of the algorithms. And there's been a call for algorithmic transparency, which is very, very important. We need to know how the algorithms are working and make sure that they are transparent so we can, in fact, independently verify the results and examine the operations. These are very important points. The Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, which is huge in the engineering world, had a statement on the importance of algorithmic transparency and accountability. It's so important. They said increasingly there's growing evidence that some algorithms and analytics can be opaque, making it impossible to determine when their outputs may in fact be biased or worse, erroneous. We have to be able to examine these independently. That led me this summer to build something I called AI Ethics by Design. There are 7 foundational principles to how AI should be operating by design. It's an extension of privacy by design. Obviously, the need for transparency and accountability is vital. You have to have ethical principles apply to the treatment of personal data, and algorithmic independent oversight and responsibility must be assured. Of course, respect for privacy is just a fundamental right, and data protection, especially personal control via privacy as the default, will be absolutely critical. You have to be proactive in order to identify the security risks in an effort to prevent the harms that may result, and you need very strong documentation to facilitate both ethical design and data symmetry. So take a look at these and see if you can incorporate them into your discussions. Privacy by design is ready for takeoff. In the GDPR, this article last year was referring to, but they also referenced a new organization that I've just developed, an International Council for Global Privacy and Security by Design. And we've just launched this. It's going to be taking off in January. We're doing a big press release in that area. And it's to drive home the importance of privacy and security by design, ensuring that both are delivered in this positive sum manner, and doing this internationally so that we can see some growth in it. Because it's really vital, especially when there's an increase in terrorist incidents. Invariably, you have the pendulum swinging back to, forget about privacy, we need security. Of course you do, but not to the exclusion of privacy. I reject that. You can have both. That's why I formed this new council. And I would love it if you go to my website, gpsbydesign.org, and take a look at it. And if you agree with the premise, please join our new International Council. There's no charge for joining. It just means that you indicate your agreement with the model of privacy and security being embedded in design, making it a win-win proposition, doubly enabling. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by asking you to please consider being proactive in all that you do in terms of privacy and security in this new world of growing machine-informed decision-making, where artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks will be growing dramatically. We have to preserve transparency, accountability, responsibility, and independent oversight. All of this can be embedded into the design of our operations. So please take a look at this, and if you don't do this, unfortunately, you're going to have privacy by disaster, which is the worst thing, which comes at the tail end of you having a privacy breach or data infraction and then having the regulator on the door. And that's the last thing you want. So I'm going to thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also going to mention that if you're interested, I tweet every morning between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. on what's been happening around the world. So take a look at my tweets if you're interested, and you'll keep abreast of what's going on, certainly in the privacy by design world. Thank you so much for your time today.